sound lending principles that has the capital and the liquidity and the earnings and the growth and the asset quality to continue to lend, to continue to meet the credit needs of our customers, it would have been very easy to say that that bill was a really bad idea. However, I don't think there's any doubt that it was needed. And it was needed because the credit markets were locked up and they had to be released. We have small business in our area that is a retirement home. That retirement home has bonds outstanding for building their facility. When a series of those bonds came up, there was no market for those bonds. That was repeated with a hospital in our area. That was repeated in lots of different ways. That was repeated by some of the banks that I'm sure other witnesses are talking about, where they just simply did not have the liquidity to meet loan demand. So the bill had to happen. Now that it's there, how do we use it? And as I said in my testimony, you could use it to inject capital, but you also could use it to guarantee loans. And in guaranteeing loans, you leave that relationship intact between the borrower and the bank. You leave intact the creation of capital if you guarantee those loans. So I think a better use would probably be to buy back loans. Obviously, they're going to be buying back securities, and I presume that some capital injection makes sense, but I would prefer they did a lot more of the former.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Dorfman, I'll turn to you next if I can. I think it's fair to say from your statement that the bailout, or again, rescue plan, you had some real concerns about it and how it was structured and everything else. And of course, it happened now, it's already done, but so I won't ask you how you would have structured it, but now that it is the law, are there changes, modifications, because Congress can always change things? How would you suggest that we modify this over the next upcoming months or year to make it more useful for small business folks?
Well, again, I think we need to ensure that that there is a benefit to the small business owner. And I'd just like to reflect back on the lending. I had a member who went for a small business loan with Bank of America about 6 weeks ago before the financial issues. And she was told that we don't do small business loans. And the question was, well, not even the SBA loans? No. But what they would give is a line of credit or a revolving credit at 21% interest. So I really have a concern that the money that's out there is not being used appropriately in terms of assisting the small business owner access to capital. And I feel that's where the focus should be, that we need to get the lines of credit back to what they were. Our members have been very good about paying them back, and the ones who are growing, they can't even get capital they need so they can hire more people and try and help turn the economy around. So I think that's where the focus needs to be.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, relative to the 2001 and 2003 tax cuts on capital gains and across the board and all the other ones that were passed, the federal inheritance tax, the death tax, do you have an opinion as to whether, even though we haven't made them permanent yet, they haven't gone back up, but Congress in its budget this past year put us on the glide path for those tax cuts ending, and there's been a lot of talk about capital gains taxes going back up. Do you have an opinion as to how that would affect small businesses and markets and job creation?
Thank you, sir. We would support the continuation of those, not for profit-taking, but for reinvestment. Most of our constituency are sole entrepreneurs, closely and privately held, and profitability from, if the contribution to profitability from reduced taxes, the vast majority is reinvested in the business, either to buy equipment or to hire additional people. If I'm allowed to comment on some of the earlier thrust in regard to bankers and what can be done, I empathize greatly with Mr. Franke. Our company 7 years ago was on the verge of bankruptcy. I faced a choice, a very difficult one. Pay the banker, pay payroll, or pay a bankruptcy attorney. I sought to pay the bankruptcy attorney so I could hold the others at bay. There is a reason things are happening today the way they are, and it's called the pace of change. For a small company like most of ours, we don't have the critical mass to absorb a jolting change in the marketplace. And I'm going to use one example. Steel, which comprises the vast majority of our purchases, went up 85% in the months of April and May. Healthcare walked in and gave us a 28% price increase or cost increase. We don't have the resiliency to absorb that, and that often pushes smaller companies to the brink of things they prefer not to do. Now, this may not sound very sophisticated in a legal term, but I would like to see incorporated in this environment a timeout so that the details of situations can be evaluated, so that declining or deteriorating financials on the part of a small business don't impair the bank's credit rating. Likewise, let's get the detail out and sort out. There may be some businesses legitimately that should go out, but with the pace of change that we're all experiencing, far too many are going out when they don't need to. Thank you.
Mr. Bradbury, you stated in your testimony, and I quote, in talking to the bank, the feeling I get is that at the lower levels, they do not have a clear direction on what they can or cannot do in regards to loan approvals. Could you go into that in a little detail, what you meant by that?
The bank we're using, because credit lines and things are coming down, and it's just through the natural progression, that when you need to go and get a decision made at a bank about funding future growth, they want to go to their corporate headquarters to get an answer versus being able to have a direction at the bank level. So the loan officer doesn't seem to have a clear picture of what he's approved and what decisions he can make, and they're still trying to figure that out.
Okay. All right, thank you. And Mr. Franke, just a couple of questions. One, where do you all go from here? Do you have any kind of plans at this point? And how many employees were there that lost their jobs over this period of time?
At the high point, we were roughly 170.
170?
And my brother and I have one thing maybe in the works. We're talking. We have a non-disclosure, but we also have a guarantee to the bank, so we have to resolve that before we can move forward.
Mm-hmm. And how many other small businesses did you use as suppliers? And I assume that this will have an impact on them as well?
Numerous, yes. There were independent wholesale people left in town and some of the larger ones, but yes, we used almost everybody that was involved in the building material supply.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congressman